today let's talk a little bit about epoxy. Supertight just launched this brand new epoxy out on the market, and I need to take a second and talk just about this epoxy. General epoxies are super hazardous to you, and they have cancer-causing agents and are very toxic to your body. A lot of people are not applying or using the epoxy that is on the market. They're not using masks or any type of protective gear, and it is essentially destroying your lungs. So Supertight came out with this brand new stuff. It is a two-part epoxy, but the greatest thing about this is there is no warning labels on here, because there is nothing in here that is going to destroy your lungs or cause you cancer or anything like that. It is a stinking blessing that somebody finally cares enough about our bodies to come out with an epoxy that is not going to kill you. I cannot stress enough, there are so many makers out there and top YouTube influencers that were doing glitter epoxy cups and tumblers and has since gotten super sick. They've even died off of it. It is not worth it. So if you're using any type of epoxy out there, throw that away. This stuff right here is guaranteed to not give you any type of degenerative issues with your lungs or anything like that. Now, let's go into how to prep this. They come in smaller bottles. They're pretty small. The greatest thing about this epoxy right here is that you don't need a whole lot to make what you're trying to make. If you're doing glitter epoxy tumblers, this is the same epoxy that you would use, only this stuff is the better stuff. The other thing too is both of these things, when you put them together, this one kind of has like a purple tint to it in the bottle, and this is kind of like a grayish tint. But once you put these two together and it dries completely clear. There's nothing to it. The other greatest thing about this too is that there is no need to measure anything. The way that Supertight has designed this product is that we don't have to be scientists or mathematicians. It's just an eyeball method. And so you do have a little bit of leeway, but essentially what it is 1-to-1 ratio. I actually use this epoxy on all of my acrylic items. So I have these right here that I have to glue. They're little daisies. They're made out of acrylic. And then I put these little center doodads on that. The other thing I also make is I make these seedy cake toppers with this mirror gold, and I glue that on top of sticker paper. Now, if you've ever worked with mirror acrylic and gluing it, you do know that sometimes you get the mirror portion will start to come off. This stuff does not do that for you. Okay, so I've already mentioned before about how to prep this epoxy. It is very simple. We're going to start with part A first. You just want to take the lid off. The coolest thing about this is it has a needle nose on the top, and then you're just going to squeeze a little bit out. You don't need a whole lot of epoxy. Like I said before, a little goes a long way with this stuff, and I'm only doing 3 little dots and then this cake topper right here, so I don't need a whole lot of epoxy. It is going to be hard to see, but that little dot right there is the part A. We're going to use the part B, same thing. We're going to take the lid off, and we are going to eyeball it right next to it. So remember, we don't have to be mathematicians. We just got to kind of do the same amount on each side. There we go. I think I did more part B than part A, but that's okay. And I use silicone brushes for this. You could also use disposable brushes if you wanted, or like wood picks. And I'm just going to stir this in. This is activating the two together so it starts to harden. This epoxy has a 1 to 2 hour cure. So what that means is that your working time is 1 to 2 hours. The full cure is about 24 hours, but if you wanted it to cure faster, you would just make this, or whatever your project is, out into a warmer environment and it'll cure faster. So if you wanted it to be a longer working time, go into a colder environment. So just remember that the warmer cures faster, colder cures slower. And I'm just gonna make sure that this is all mixed up really well. Now, right now, this epoxy is still pretty runny. I actually like to let it sit for a little bit, for about 30-45 minutes, until it turns into like a jelly, and then I glue all of my acrylic. Okay, now that my epoxy has been sitting, I am going to get a smaller silicone brush, especially for these small little dots, and all I'm gonna do is just take a little bit of epoxy on my brush, and I'm just gonna dab it on. Again, you don't need a whole lot, you just need a little bit. And then for this, all I'm gonna do is just use my crystal katana, and I'm gonna pick this up and just place it into place. Once they're in place, I'm just going to just push them down just a little bit. That is it for these ones. That's so simple. Again, 1 to 2 hours it will cure, so I'm just going to slide these over and keep them flat. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to keep using my small little brush. I'm going to arrange these first on my cake topper. Okay, when I got it in the position that I like it in, I'm going to start with the first one. And when you have engraves on the back of mirror acrylic, you want to keep the epoxy out of that. So I'm just going to take a little line and I'm going to go in between the score marks. Again, you don't need a whole lot of epoxy. This stuff is super strong, y'all, so just a little bit of epoxy will go a long way. And now the curing process is already happening with that end. Same thing with the O. We're going to keep it on the inside portion, not going into the score lines or the engrave. Okay, when I have the first layer done, I always just like to move this around and rearrange it before the curing really starts to happen. Okay, I like the look of that. Okay, we're going to work on this portion. Okay, that's it for the glue or that I need to do today. I'm just going to leave this the way it is and I'm just going to slide it over to the side so it can cure in, again, 1 to 2 hours. Okay, and all of that gluing, which isn't a whole lot, but you can tell that I used way too much epoxy because I have a ton left. So there's nothing that you can really do about this. It's just going to dry and cure. So essentially we just wasted a little bit, but it still wasn't a whole lot. And I've had my bottle for about 2 months now and it still looks practically full. So a little goes a long way for this epoxy. All right, y'all, please, if you have any other branded epoxy out there, throw it away and get yourself some of this super tight stuff. I have it linked down in the description of this video for you. There is a discount code as well that I have for it, but please throw away any other epoxy that you have and get this stuff. All right, y'all, I will see you later.